Council, we have one item of unfinished business, and that is an ordinance adopting the fiscal year 2025-2026 annual operating budget. I'm kicking it to Deborah, and then I'm sure she's going to say some words and then kick it to Tony.
Yep, we will be having Lindsay do the presentation
Lindsay.
tonight. But again, good evening, Mayor and City Council, staff, and the Asheville community. As stated, the anticipated action tonight will hopefully complete the budget development process that's been underway for the past 6 to 9 months. Due to Tropical Storm Helene, managing this year's budget and developing next year's proposed budget, which would be the action that you'll be taking tonight, we hope, has been extremely challenging. But we, staff and council, persevered and have found a way to develop a budget that maintains the city's core services to the community, restores the fund balance in a manner to maintain the city's strong credit rating, and utilizes one-time revenue sources such as Community Development Block Grant, Disaster Recovery Grant funds, and Federal Emergency Management Agency dollars to fund the community's recovery priorities to enable us to build back better. And then lastly, and most importantly, we have tried to develop a budget that minimizes and mitigates the impact on our property owners. Again, I want to recognize Finance and Management Services Director Tony McDowell and the staff in the Budget Division, including Lindsay Spangler, Heather Carey, Abigail Riley, Liz Green, and Natalie Bailey, for all the numerous meetings and hours spent to manage this process and help develop this budget. I also want to thank department directors, staff in the city manager's office, and each and every one of our city employees for their cooperation and support. And last, but certainly not least, I want to thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council for the many hours you all spent helping and guiding us through this budget process. I will now turn it over to Lindsay Spangler to review the proposed budget and changes that have been made since the manager's budget was presented at the May 13th meeting. And we do apologize because this is a lot of information that you all have heard before, but we think this is so important. Some people may be tuning in who haven't heard. So take it away, Lindsay.
Thank you very much, Ms. Campbell. And just to echo what Ms. Campbell said, thank you all for your support during this whole process. It's really been a whole of government approach to this budget, and it's been amazing to see everyone kind of participate and get to where we are today. So thank you for letting me be here to discuss with you again. All right, last time, guys, let's do it.
Your enthusiasm.
Yeah, seriously,
Wonderful.
this is like one big party tonight.
We're on our way.
Great, all right, so last time we all met, we had the public comment to hear from the community about their feelings on the budget, and today you will vote. So the budget includes a 3.26 cent property tax rate increase, which will allow us to continue with current operations throughout the city. Also will provide a compensation adjustment for employees, and it will allow us to maintain a strong fund balance to help us maintain our credit rating. And at the last meeting, at the agenda briefing on last Thursday, we heard from council a majority support to add 3 firefighters to next year's budget in the January Academy, so half of a year of salaries for them. And the proposed budget that we presented to you in May has been amended to include the cost of that, and it will be funded through fund balance. All right, everyone's favorite slide, the calendar. So just showing everyone where we've been, when we started back in February at the retreat, all the times that we've come to you to discuss, and here we are at the end of the road. Also just want to remind everybody the themes that we've been trying to focus on, especially this year as we're dealing with recovery from Tropical Storm Helene. These are kind of the key themes that we've been trying to keep in mind. So we want to make sure that we are maintaining the city's core services while also minimizing cost increases to residents and businesses, since we're all trying to recover from the storm together. We have been trying to maximize one-time revenue sources as much as possible, and that includes using federal funding as well as some other different funding sources so that we can minimize the increases to residents. And lastly, and of course always, we aim to develop a fiscally responsible budget that helps us to maintain our financial metrics and our strong credit rating. So here was the proposed budget that was presented to you all in May. Later on, I'll show you this chart, but with the adjustments included. But just for history, just to show you the $256.1 million budget. All right, a little bit of history. So, Tropical Storm Helene has led us to need to reevaluate some of our revenue projections for next year. And so we have worked with departments to instruct them not to request any additional funding or positions for next year, and so the proposed budget reflects that. However, there are some unavoidable cost increases just associated with continuing existing operations. So a lot of that is people, so that a lot of that is increases to healthcare and our state retirement contributions. So what that leads us to is a situation where our revenues were not expected to be covered, were not expected to cover our expenses, meaning we needed to find some budget balancing strategies. So we worked with departments to find about $5 million in budget reductions, which were meant to close the gap without creating an undue burden on the community or reduce services. We also were able to utilize some one-time funding sources, such as fund balance in the street cut fund and the transit fund to cover cost increases. And of course, we also were able to receive a $5 million loan from FEMA that is included in the budget as a one-time revenue. So this next section, we have spent a lot of this budget process talking about what's new to the budget, what we're proposing to add, but we also wanted to kind of take this presentation to focus on all the ongoing work that we're doing. So we have this $256 million budget. What are the things that the city is doing to cover that? And we've kind of organized this by council priority. So as you all discussed in your work session right prior to this meeting, there are 4 main priorities that council has established for the recovery, and just want to go through some of the things that we're funding that hit those priorities. So I won't read through all of these, but first priority is people. So we're aiming to keep people informed with the Asheville Recovery's website and the capital dashboards. We're providing neighborhood matching grants, supporting reparations, etc. For the priority of economy, we are constantly making updates to city's planning, making sure that our public spaces are clean and safe. And of course, that included in that is the establishment of the Business Improvement District downtown. For infrastructure and environment, of course, we have $80 million in GEO bond funding that we're working to spend down as quickly as possible. We're also making improvements to the water system and picking up storm debris, etc. And lastly, housing. We are using CDBG-DR funds to enhance affordable housing for the city. And we're also using GEO bond funding to fund the Housing Trust Fund and get more affordable housing in that area as well, in addition to supporting our homeless community through the Continuum of Care and other programs. So that's all the things we're already doing, and just now we'll speak a little bit to the things that are going to be added to this new budget. We've worked with you all through this process to figure out what is the compensation adjustment that makes the most sense for all city employees, that remains fiscally responsible, but also helps to recognize our employees, that many of whom were first responders during the storm. And this is where we landed. So folks on the general pay plan above the median salary will get a 3% increase to their salary, while those below the median will get a $1,740 flat increase, which is equal to 3% of the median salary. So brings the people below the median a little bit higher. For those on the police pay plan, we're transitioning them to a new pay structure, which will include some compensation adjustments to avoid compression amongst employees. And for those not receiving that adjustment, they'll receive a one-time 3% increase next year. And for those on the fire pay plan, they'll be receiving a 3% increase as well. And we also just wanted to note here that during the public hearing last week on the budget, there was some incorrect information that was given by a community member about the changes to the fire's pay plan last year. And so we just wanted to kind of add this information here for the record that last year we did give firefighters, beginning on-shift firefighters, an increase of $4,000, which is about an 8.8% increase for those lowest paid on-shift firefighters. And in addition, police pay plan employees received a 6% increase. Those on the general pay plan also received an increase as well. Moving on, so the proposed budget also includes $205,000 for firefighter promotions, which will allow AFD to put in the supervisory structure in place for implementing a fourth shift. And what this does is allow the fire department to start this long-term process of moving firefighters from working 56 hours a week down to 42 hours a week. And the way that they will achieve this is through hiring more firefighters a few year by year. And in the proposed budget, we didn't include any additional firefighters for this year. We kind of left it to future councils and staff to determine what the resources will allow in that situation. And again, there were changes made to this since the proposed budget, but just for the record, wanted to show what was originally proposed here, and then we'll get into the changes later. So take the existing operations, the compensation adjustments, the pay plan for APD, new fourth shift, maintaining our fund balance, and what we need to close the gap is a 3.26 cent increase on the tax rate. And you'll see here the average homeowner impacts as well. Quickly to just go through some highlights from the enterprise funds, there were some increases in the water fund due to the fee increases that you folks approved at a recent meeting, and there were also some changes to the parking and transit funds here. Lastly, just one slide on the CIP, which Walter went through a lot of the projects that are in the CIP just now, but next year we're expected to spend $26.5 million, and this doesn't include the GEO bond funded projects or the federally funded FEMA recovery projects. All right, so since the proposed budget was released, there have been a couple changes that we wanted to run through with you so that everyone's on the same page about what you folks will be voting on tonight. So as discussed, the proposed budget did not include any firefighters. So we've heard that a majority of council is supportive of hiring 3 additional firefighters as part of the January 26 class. So this, the budget you'll be voting on tonight will include funding of $155,000 for those 3 firefighters. And the future year cost will be about $248,000. And this will be funded with fund balance next year. And then for future years, we'll have to kind of take into account our revenue projections and figure out how to fund them in future years. So here's just some pros and cons that we had presented to council during the agenda briefing. So pros is it allows council to further demonstrate their support for the fourth shift and just kind of accelerating that process by adding the 3 firefighters next year as a show of support for that. And cons is, it will lower our estimate for unassigned fund balance from 15 to 14.9%, so kind of a small adjustment, but just worth noting. And what we're hearing is that the majority of council is comfortable with this minor reduction. And also just to note that since fund balance is a one-time revenue source, this will work for next year, but then in future years, we'll kind of need to reevaluate if this would require a property tax rate increase or if we're able to find revenue elsewhere. And there's a second adjustment we wanted to just bring to everyone's attention in the street cut fund. So there's a little technical adjustment made of $130,000 for a vehicle that was scheduled to be purchased this year, but because of procurement delays and the storm, the purchase won't be finalized until next year. So basically we're kind of taking it down in this year and putting it up in next year. And this is in the street cut fund, and it is paid with debt service that is paid by the street cut program participants. All right, so you add those two adjustments into the proposed budget, and this is what you get. $256.36 million, which still kind of rounds down to about a 2% change to the city's budget. All right, and that's it. I'll leave you with this last slide. That is the action that will need to be voted on, which is a little bit complex because it involves
This looks like Brad's doing.
yeah, I'll pass it over to Brad for this one. Thank you
I thought
all.
you wanted to go on vacation tomorrow.
Okay.
I have a question, if I could. There's something that's been coming up in community, and we haven't talked about in the budget cycle. We won't achieve an economic recovery without workers and their families, and I know there's a desperate need for more rental assistance. When the fiscal year renews, are we anticipating the regular CDBG funds could include rental assistance?
Oh,
Do we know?
I think we've talked about that at the COC, and Emily was here, but I believe so. But-
Okay.
Yeah, and I know I'm walking up here, but I'm not sure I have an answer.
Yeah, really,
I
you
do
look
know
like,
the-
I'm like,
The
let's see what Tony says.
CDBG fund budgets and the home budgets are scheduled to come to you all, I think, in July, right?
July,
They were running
yeah.
a little behind on that. So they'll be back, I think, next month with those budgets, and so we could get those questions answered then.
Rental assistance and repair were definitely topics.
Okay, thank you.
So we have already taken public comment on the budget, so there is no further public comment on the budget this evening. This is the time when you could make long speeches or short speeches.
I do have
Or
a
ask
prepared-
questions.
I do have a prepared statement.
Okay.
I appreciate my colleagues for joining me in this small but mighty symbolic step of funding 3 of the 14 first phase positions for a 4th shift, as studied by our Asheville Fire Department, designed to reduce the 832 additional hours every year that our firefighters are scheduled beyond the 40-hour work week. They got us through a geological disaster, and we need to retain them. While the fire department stands to make the least pay increases of any department in this budget cycle, good faith efforts towards a 4th shift is key retention strategy and becoming an industry standard. This budget includes our commitments to community values by continuing funding for sustainability, reparations, staffing of the Human Relations and Anti-Discrimination and Compliance Department, and more. By continuing the community-led strategy of providing a flat rate raise to staff making below the median income in City Hall, we're bringing 67 city employees up to the $23.15 an hour living wage of the 151 employees currently below living wage. I am deeply concerned about the property tax increase after the natural disaster of Helene, which disproportionately impacts residential and commercial renters and legacy neighborhoods. Unfortunately, the General Assembly hasn't taken action yet on recovery funding. The need for revenue loss replacement for cities is here. The state has funding, but their action has been delayed, and that puts cities recovering from Helene, including Asheville, in the terrible situation of raising taxes to maintain public services. We also need a serious plan for strategic partnership funds, which has been cut to zero in this budget cycle. There were crises and disparities in our community that predated the storm, and I'm not okay with leaving partners working with our vulnerable youth with yet another funding loss. We need to return this funding at the soonest opportunity this year. Lastly, I'm heartsick and embarrassed for our organization that $1.3 million of this budget hinged in part on what I consider to be a dirty, short-sighted deal with energy monopoly Duke Energy, giving away what appeared to me to be a last serious lever to negotiate agreements like renewable energy commitments and getting power poles out of our sidewalks. I expect some disappointment in my supportive vote for the budget tonight. I trust the limitation of yes and no reflects my commitment to what was fought for in this budget. In the aftermath of Helene, a need for more creativity and community organizing, and my commitment to continue fighting for budgets, plans, and policies that reflect the values of our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? before we vote?
Just
Please.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Asheville. Tonight, we may pass a budget in the wake of one of the worst natural disasters in North Carolina history. This was my first budget season as one of your council members, and I think we have approached this process methodically, listening and learning with one mission: to deliver for the people of Asheville with a budget that kept all of our services in place and provided a much-needed pay raise for our city employees who have tirelessly worked in and day out and have taken on extra recovery work since the storm. This budget wasn't easy. Staff and council spent hours in meetings, wrestling with numbers, asking hard questions, debating values and trade-offs. And I want to thank our city staff, Tony, Lindsay, Deborah, Jade, Ben, Brad, for showing up again and again. And also thank my colleagues for showing up with dedication and grace. And I think that out of that difficulty, there's something that is worth being proud of. We reduced the budget by over $5 million without eliminating a single position. We preserved every city service, we kept our reparations fund intact, and we continued support at levels that we had continued to fund them for our strategic community partnerships. And we even have money for litter and syringe cleanup, as well as funding our Asheville firefighters resource extensive support team. We also raised pay for our frontline workers, including a new pay plan for the Asheville Police and an innovative fourth shift for firefighters, positioning us as a regional leader in firefighter pay and wellness. And I want to thank Mayor Manheimer for sealing that deal. Thank you. And we did all of this while navigating one of the most difficult financial moments in our city's recent history. Now, as Councilmember Roney said, this budget includes a tax increase, which sucks. And I hear from folks that even a small increase is no small matter, especially for those on fixed incomes, renters, small business owners, and working families already stretched too thin. However, as I saw it, and I think the majority of my colleagues saw it, to be fiscally responsible, we did not have many options that did not put our long-term financial health at risk. And also importantly, as Councilmember Roney stated, the state of North Carolina has not yet provided revenue replacement for cities like ours devastated by Helene. And without that support, we have very limited tools to generate income. So we faced this reality: either raise the revenue we need or cut the very services and staff our city depends on. So tonight, I'm content with what we've done. However, I also know this work is far from over. We will continue fighting for revenue replacement. We will continue listening to our neighbors and ensuring every voice is heard. Thank you, Mayor.
I feel like I need a pom-pom for that. I mean, I really appreciate both of my colleagues' words, so I'm going to keep mine very limited and echo much of that same sentiment. It has not been an easy budget cycle. I know our staff, we put them through the ringers, and I'm really grateful that you took the time and energy to stretch it out and to give us so many opportunities to ask our bajillion questions and to go back and forth so many times like you did. But I just want to express my appreciation. It's a really challenging time throughout everything we're doing in the community right now, and this budget is no different. So yeah, thank you. I couldn't say it any better than both of you just did. So I appreciate all your words.
I'll
Okay,
jump in.
oh, go ahead, please.
Yeah. This has been a very hard budget for me, and I started in a different place than where I'm landing. I mean, my colleagues have said a lot of the same sentiments. I'm very concerned about unemployment, and any tax increase is painful for a lot of people right now. And at the end of the day, when you look at the bulk of what the tax increase goes to, it goes to two things. One, to make our fund balance basically whole so that we can continue borrowing money to repair our community and build the community we need. And two, to give our employees raises. And I can't look y'all in the eye and say good job for saving our lives during the storm and live on last year's salary. I just can't do that. So the thanks around for how hard staff have worked to pull this together, how hard council has worked to look through all this, I echo. But I think at the end of the day, our public servants, we relied on them to save our lives, and they deserve a cost of living. And so I'm in support of the budget.
Anyone else? Oh, okay. I do want to thank Deborah and staff. You all have done an incredible amount of work on this budget, and to this council for working so hard on it. We had, I think, a much better process this year, which you can see as a result, and a lot of community engagement. We don't have a packed house tonight on this, and so that, to me, that's an indication that there's been a lot of meetings and a lot of opportunities for input along the way. So where we land is, it's definitely a compromise. The other thing I would reflect on is with a hurricane disaster like we've just experienced in our community, I think it creates a lot of uncertainty for community members, and it can be very distressing. And one thing that is reassuring to the community is leadership that is in lockstep together in terms of making hard decisions for our community and moving us forward. So I can't predict the future, but I'm hopeful that we have unanimous support for this budget tonight, and as an indication to the community that we're working hard together to help our community recover from this disaster. With that, does anyone want to start the 5 motions?
I move to adopt an ordinance adopting the fiscal year 2025-2026 annual budget.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Yay. Okay, how about number 2 motion? Okay, you have to recuse me because of this.
We need more excitement, Mayor.
Yes.
I move to recuse Mayor Manheimer from voting on the attached budget amendment in accordance with North Carolina Session Law 2021-191, SB 473, Economic Development Coalition.
Second.
All right, we have a motion second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay,
Just keep going.
keep going.
I move to adopt a fiscal year 2025-26 budget amendment in the amount of $100,000 in the general fund to allocate budget from city manager's contingency to fund the city's annual contribution to the Economic Development Coalition.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Except me, because I'm not supposed to vote on that one. All right, any opposed? All right, next.
Move to recuse, did I just remove?
No, you're
Okay.
doing another one. Yeah.
Move to recuse Councilwoman Turner from voting on the attached budget amendment in accordance with North Carolina Session Law 2021-191, SB 473 for the Sports Commission.
Second.
All right, so all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And then finally,
I move to adopt a fiscal year 2025-2026 budget amendment in the amount of $45,000 in the general fund to allocate budget from city manager's contingency to fund the city's annual contribution to the Sports Commission.
Second.
all right. We have a motion second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Except Sage. Any opposed? All right, we did it. Yay, I mean, we collectively, we did
That's the
it.
first
That
unanimous
was
budget I've
that
done.
was a visual relief there.
Yeah.
That was the first one?
Unanimous budget I voted on.
Oh, that you.
Oh, really? So that's 3 years in a row?
Back in the day,
Yeah.
we used to do that a lot more.
Well, I know a lot of us had some challenges and uncomfortable moments, so I appreciate us all coming together.
Okay, good job, everybody.